He's like, well, if my mom had balls, she would be my dad.
He's always like, WTF, mate? Saturdays are for competition again.
He was 40 points back.
Wakey, wakey, Lando. Wakey, wakey. Look at that gap.
Without Kimi Antonelli, Max wins the championship.
That's like something you'd see in the F1 movie. Is this the world champion hotline? Lando had to win his first against Max. Welcome in, Formula One fans, to the Tyred Boys podcast. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back after a nice long winter break. We had F1 testing. The preseason is now wrapped up, and we're getting ready to kick off the 2026 season in Australia this weekend. So a lot of action, a lot to talk about today. Justin, it's good to be back. It's good to see you, man.
Good to be back in the stew. Good to see you as well, sir. It's been a long, cold winter, but I'm excited to be kind of back at it, and really looking forward to talking through the recent Bahrain test that we had, not last week, but the previous, kind of taking up a couple weeks there in February. So yeah, excited to chop it up.
Awesome, and we'll do a little bit of a different format today. We're gonna really go through the preseason and regulation changes and all of the kind of craziness that went on between the 2025 and now 2026 season. We've had teams change names, new team on the grid, some new drivers and shifting around. So a lot to get into. And we can kind of start that out here talking about what's new for the season with these regulations and technical changes. One of the bigger, just more noticeable changes that you can visually see is that we have smaller, lighter cars. So the amount of space on the circuit, maneuverability of these cars is expected to be a little bit better and help with overtaking and the on-track battles just with the size of the car, especially as we add more street circuits onto the calendar. That will make a big difference. And then with all these other regulation changes, you can see a lot of differing strategies in terms of car design, wings, different sticky uppy bits, and everything, different side pods and cooling ducts across all the teams who are kind of trying to find that top form here leading into the season. Similar to kind of Mercedes when they went with the no side pod design. So everyone's starting to figure out what works best.
Yeah, and I think some like common things that you'll see is the wheelbases have been shortened, and I guess the idea for that is to be more responsive in corners, so you can get a little more racy. Like you were talking about, the floors being a big like area of innovation. The ground effect tunnels are gone. That's the ground effect was left in 2025. So we're in favor of like flatter floors with bigger diffusers at the back. So like less downforce is going to be generated from the floor, and so they'll be able to like raise the ride height a little bit. And I guess the idea with that, this is just what I've learned from the engineers. I guess the idea with that is it's supposed to encourage more driving styles. So instead of just having like a few that work for the ground effect cars, hopefully it'll open up space for more drivers like to be a little more comfortable. Yeah, and then like you mentioned, the aero elements being smaller and having the active component that we'll get into next. So some really interesting like changes to the car, and like we were talking about previously, like they feel very similar to like a Formula 2 car, in size and styling basically, but just a little bit bigger, obviously. But yeah, and then a couple of interesting. There's like some engine and like team things that I think we should go through. You've got some You've got some notes about the fuel that's going to go in those engines. A couple teams bringing different fuel like manufacturers. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and so with the new engine regulations, one of those things, and this push for Formula One is to be carbon neutral. So teams are now using all carbon neutral, 100% sustainable fuels, and there isn't a specific fuel brand like you see in maybe IndyCar, where you get that 100% Shell renewable fuel that they talk about during pit stop fill-ups. This Each team gets to go and kind of choose their own, or at least each engine provider is choosing their own fuel that they want to work with, and of course keeping that the same across all of the engines that they supply will give them even better data on the fuel and how it's performing, efficiency, all those things for the team. So Mercedes and all of their power units, so McLaren, Williams, and Alpine as well, will be using Petronas fuel. Ferrari, Haas, and Cadillac are going to be using Shell fuel with the Ferrari engines. Red Bull and Racing Bulls are going to be using Exxon Mobil fuel. Audi is using a BP Castrol fuel, and then Aston Martin will be using an Aramco fuel, one of their title sponsors there, with the Honda engine being Aston Martin. So at this point, there's really no knowing whether one manufacturer might provide a better fuel or more efficient fuel than others. There's a whole combination of how these fuels are designed, whether they're biofuels using algae to pull the oil from and create fuel, or whether it's through recycled plastics that have been processed down into fuel, or just whatever they've come up to make 100% renewable, sustainable fuel. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, both in terms of reliability for these engine manufacturers across the year, as well as that actual performance of the engine and how fast these cars go.
People talk about wanting to be like cremated or buried. I want to be melted down into Formula One biofuel and used at a Spa Grand Prix. That's how I want to go out.
That's the
Um,
dream.
that would be the dream. The one thing I want to talk about first, thanks for providing the color for the different fuels that the different teams are going to be using. I just kind of want to follow up on that to talk about the different original engine manufacturers that are going to be providing the engines, like you had talked about. These different teams buying the fuel; those are also like the works teams that are then like selling the engine. So like you had talked about, Mercedes is selling to McLaren, Williams, and Alpine. Ferrari selling to Haas and Cadillac. Red Bull and Racing Bulls are using the same. Audi's bringing their own engine, and then Aston Martin, like you had talked about, is bringing the Honda engine. I just wanted to highlight that some of the teams are still purchasers for their engines, and we don't have like all works teams on the grid coming into this year. One element I do want to talk about the engines, big difference coming into this year is the 50-50 split between the V6 turbo hybrid engine that that the new biofuels are going to go into that Aaron was talking about. So it's 50%, excuse me, V6 turbo hybrid engine, and then the battery power, notably 0% desert power. So that's a shame. But as I do understand, that split is what's going to allow for these other like in race systems that the drivers were getting used to, where and now we can talk about the different ways of charging your battery, the different ways that you can use that harvested battery power from that now like very significant part of your like deployment package. So we can talk about how we can use the battery power, and then lastly, one of the most exciting things, and stay tuned for later in the show because we're going to talk about some of these active aero elements. Bro, what the Ferrari brought, like, it obviously just like blew everybody's minds, right?
Yeah.
So teams are like really experimenting and trying to find that wiggle room inside of those regulations, right? So we still have some interesting things to talk about. So Aaron, let's talk about that other side of the deployment package, and let's talk about the battery.
Yeah, and so looking at these batteries, like we said, that 50-50 split between the V6 turbo engine and the battery power, there's not only going to be a number of ways that you can deploy that battery throughout the race, you're also going to have multiple ways that you can charge the battery. And so, amongst those, and teams are still figuring out, and maybe some teams utilize certain methods better or worse than others for that recharging. But you're seeing that during the braking, they're going to be charging. There's going to be when you're partially throttling in, if you're lifting and coasting, all of those things where the engine is revving, but you're not putting in full throttle, are kind of going to be pushing that energy stored up into these batteries. And even one of the other techniques that Max was seeing using pretty frequently during his testing sessions is the super clipping, where you're either at the very top of your revs for that specific gear, or even downshifting early and having the revs on the in the new gear be super high to do additional charging for the battery. So there's all these kind of different ways that you can do, and that also, like you were saying, with the cars allowing for some different driving styles, I think will enhance that as well and give drivers the opportunity to figure out a style that works best for them in terms of harvesting that energy and charging those batteries, as well as the deployment of them. And so Max and I think Nico Hulkenberg were the two primary drivers who were focusing on that downshifting high rev style in terms of charging batteries. And at least in the testing sessions, and of course, teams are hiding different things, but Red Bull was having kind of the best energy deployment and top speeds on some of the straightaways by getting that battery fully charged up, or maybe getting just a little bit more battery power than some of the teams were. So I think that's another interesting part, that even that charging of the battery can cause drivers to adapt their driving style, and is creating in the testing, which we'll get to, a little bit more difficulty and trickiness for these new cars.
Sure, because it's not just getting the like regulations right from like a factory team perspective. There's also like all of these new tools and like weapons available to the drivers to try and figure out like, okay, it's not just like the car package. There's like all of these other ways that I can like maximize like my position on track, or just like what I'm trying to do on the track, whether it's attack, defend, or whatever it may be. Those being the two simplest, I guess you could say. So yeah, what you previously would think of as like, oh, like if you saw somebody harvesting, it was like, oh, they're going slowly, is kind of the like, uh, maybe like connection, or it's like what you think is going on when you're watching a race. You see somebody harvesting, you see those lights. It's not always obvious that it's like a good or on the attack thing to be doing. But now, especially with that super clipping, it seems like you can be harvesting while in like an aggressive position. That's kind of how I was reading that element of the recharge, where you're not just recharging on defense. There's a way to recharge on the attack as well. That's at least like the way my brain's making sense of it. I'm looking forward to obviously like the racing and hearing Jolien and Alex Jakes and all them like talk about how this is actually working, because I'm not 100% sure, but just that's kind of the sense that I have of the multiple ways to charge the battery now. So I think that's pretty cool. And then there's the ways to deploy that, which is the boost and the overtake button, or the boost button, and then there's overtake mode, which is like a detection point that's on the circuit themselves.
Yeah. And so you're going to see drivers being able to deploy that. So the overtake mode is going to allow the teams to use additional battery power. I think it's like 5 megajoules more or something like that to give additional pace. Kind of a similar concept to DRS, but utilizing that battery power. And in that, it's not just free to use. So that's going to kind of come into play with it, where DRS, you get the flap open, you don't lose anything other than the drag force on your car. You're going faster, but with this additional battery deployment, it's only going to work if the teams are able to charge their batteries up enough to utilize
Right,
that. And
right.
so, giving that option to go into that overtake mode and use additional battery will be definitely interesting. And then, like you said, the boost button to kind of like the push to pass button in IndyCar. You're going to have the ability to just use that extra battery power at different points of the circuit as well, to be able to attack or defend a little bit better, in that same way that they you previously used the energy boost. I think it was ERS system in the previous cars.
Yeah, the energy recovery system is what that was,
Or
and I
yeah,
think that was part of the. I think that was part of the. I have a note here for the MGUH. I think that was like that aspect of the engine, and that was a heat recovery system. However, and this is on my note as well, it was not as applicable to road cars, which is why they kind of like wanted to stop development in that area. Because as we know, part of Formula One development and technology, the works teams kind of use the technological developments for what we drive. Our other car being a Corolla.
yeah, a little bit of a trickle down. So trickle down Formula One cars are what we drive on the roads here. But yeah,
Ooh.
there's a whole bunch of opportunities that drivers are going to be able to use these different energy modes and utilization of that battery throughout the circuit during races. But another one of those ways that they can improve their overtaking or attack, defend, and everything is the active arrow. And so that is going to be a system which changes the wings on both the front and rear of the car to reduce drag on straightaways, and then the flaps will shut closed and give them more drag, more downforce, and everything going through corners and turns throughout the circuit. So that's going to be pretty frequently going on and off on these cars as they're going through the different sectors of the track.
And I think notably, like the big difference is the front wing arrow changing, where previously we had the DRS system, which was like the 1 second on straights overtaking system, which would open the rear wing and give you like more overtaking speed. Now we've got that on both, but you can like it's like adaptable in some way. And then the other element of it is I think this is where we're going to see some crazy development from the teams over the course of the year. There was already, and this is where we can kind of start connecting it to the test, the test that was in Bahrain in February. There's teams that are messing with all different sorts of configurations, whether it's like yeah, what I don't know all the technical terms, but there are many different configurations across a bunch of the different teams. And then one of the biggest ones that was highlighted, like we had said, was the Ferrari rear wing active aero that like flipped like a full like on what they say like 270 where it like flipped all the way around and landed.
180. Yeah.
180, gotcha. So yeah, just all sorts of stuff, and that's all in that like active aero umbrella that's gonna help with racing and overtaking, and it seems very exciting and cool.
Yeah, and like you said, I think there will be a lot of different solutions because it seems like the regulations are relatively open in
Yeah.
that sense for kind of what's allowed. For instance, with the Ferrari wing, most teams are kind of having their rear wing do a similar like DRS flap, where
Hmm.
it just opens up and then closes down. But the regulations say that it can make your wing has to make one continuous move essentially, and it has to complete its movement within a certain amount of time, like zero point 0.3 seconds or something like that from activation. And so their wing just flips entirely upside down in that amount of time, one continuous motion and then one continuous motion back. So it fulfills the regulation, but it is a very different solution to the problem from the other teams where they're utilizing the curvature of the wing upside down to generate lift, almost like an airplane, to reduce the friction of the tires, reduce the apparent weight of the vehicle, and allow higher top speeds as they're going with that wing open. So the concept is definitely a unique one, but all within those regulations. A lot of the teams kind of questioned it when they first saw it. They were like, "Whoa, what is that? What is that allowed?" And the FIA was like, "Yep, it fulfills all the requirements for the active arrow." And so I do think that we'll see um, some teams adjust their strategies or their designs with those things as one solution, or if one solution, I guess, proves to be a more dominant um, solution to this problem of going fast.
Yeah, and Ferrari was pretty quick overall. So yeah, they may have something in that regard.
Yeah, I definitely think their overall package seems to work well, and I feel like they have been one of the teams that has attacked these new regulations pretty aggressively in terms of their design. They including and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, a little bit more later, but during the testing sessions, they did a couple of practice race starts, and due to a decision made a year ago by the teams, Ferrari ended up designing their engine and certain systems specifically around the startup procedure and the race start, where other teams were like, "Nah, that's not going to be an issue. We don't need to put a rule in or make any decisions on this." And Ferrari showed in those practice starts, Lewis Hamilton was flying up through with the way that they were using the energy modes, the battery power and everything on that initial start. And I think a lot of teams are gonna that's gonna be something that Ferrari is ahead of the curve on, and other teams are gonna have to play catch up. And that may be by the start of 2027 because they've done all of this work on the engines. A lot of the uh, finances and improvements that they're going to be doing during the season are going to be probably primarily reliability based for the engine versus changing kind of the full design package of the systems, and then aerodynamically. So there's going to be a little bit of a lag behind, I think, for some of these teams, and we'll see if that does play a major difference, or if just on the formation lap teams kind of figure out how to properly get their car ready to go for the startup. But that could be a little leg up, and so these couple of things Ferrari definitely found different solutions than other teams for, and I think that's going to be interesting to see how that pans out as we get going into the season.
Yeah, and see if other teams are trying to like replicate their solutions, or if they'll like find similar ways to attack the problem. But yeah, it feels like Ferrari has an interesting way to go about the regulations, with the specific start procedure and the yeah, and then the rear active arrow. And so my understanding of the start is you spin up your turbo to A, get the turbo going, but B, I think that also factors into like that super clipping. So I think the idea is like you get your revs really high, you get the car into like super clipping status, that helps charge your battery. You get as much battery charge as you can, and I'm pretty sure what he was doing to get those starts was deploying, he's like dropping his clutch, gas, and deploying battery power at the same time. I think that's what's going on, because you're like they're sitting for a while. You just hear their revs going insanely high. Why are they doing that? Well, to harvest. So I think you're actually able to deploy your energy, and this goes to the like whenever you want, basically. I think they're deploying it at the start. We may learn more, that like that data may change, but based on what I saw testing, the way they were explaining it, and like how they were talking about it, I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, and I think the part of that Ferrari has kind of optimized for is that it seems like that super clipping, like turbo, getting that going and up to speed
Right.
to be able to kind of launch a bit more quickly than the other teams. And then once you have that initial speed, the utilizing that additional energy to really secure that. So the starts are going to be very interesting. We had a couple of instances where cars were not getting off the line as the lights went out right away because their turbos weren't juiced up enough or whatnot. And others where cars are just zipping on through and flying up from P8 to P1 by the first corner. So it's going to be a very interesting lights out in Australia to see how that goes. If there are any Isaac Hadjar moments where cars are left on the grid at the start of the race, or how that turns out. But I mean, I think from the testing, one of my other big takeaways was just the amount of different things that these drivers and these teams are having to learn. And I think that's going to really just show in the early stages of the season where things are not going to be as smooth for a lot of these teams. We saw struggles with figuring out, especially with these additional boosts of energy and everything, you're coming into corners at different speeds on back to back laps and everything. So break points and a lot of those things we saw drivers struggling with, lots of lockups going wide at sections. And so the the drivers that excel the most, like right off the bat, I think are just going to be whoever is the most adaptable. It won't necessarily come down just to best power unit, best aero package. I think figuring out just how to work these new cars is going to kind of lead some drivers to excel earlier than others.
Yeah, and that difference is what we now know to be the difference between the end of a regulation cycle and the beginning of a regulation cycle. We're more likely to have scenes of engines on fire this year than we would have last year, right? You know, I imagine a 2025 is like everybody's level 18, everybody's final form, you know, like it's like their best ideas like put forward, and now everybody's like, all right, refresh, everybody's back down to level one, start of the mountain, like that type of deal. And I think that's very interesting. So yeah, maybe we'll get more, you know, iconic. Bro, that image of Carlos Sainz's Ferrari and him like getting out of it, it's just like steaming out the back. Like that image is like burned in my head.
Right.
And that's what I picture as like the kind of the poster child for like a new regulation season is just like
Yeah.
engines on fire, right?
Well, it's that reliability. I mean, all throughout
Right.
testing, we were seeing like day one, Audi had some engine issues that they had to work out, and then got they were still able to get the car back on track. Alpine had engine trouble in the morning and had to stop, but then brought it back in the afternoon to get more testing in. And throughout this, and I think this is where some um, some different engine providers are going to kind of have a little bit of a leg up. And I think
Yeah.
Mercedes is going to be the top. Ferrari is going to be number two because they're just purely getting way more data on the reliability of these engines. Mercedes has four teams using their power units. So you're going to get four teams worth of reliability data on that engine. Ferrari's got three, Red Bull's got two. So the teams, the more data you have, the quicker and more easily these teams are going to be able to figure out issues with the engine, maybe design flaws, and try and improve them. So that is going to be a huge thing in that reliability, whether we have a Mercedes or an Audi or a Ferrari parked up on the side on fire. As long as it's not a Red Bull, I'm happy. But no, it's it's going to be really interesting. And like you said, the those kinds of moments are going to be increased. I think the gaps as we're seeing are going to be a bit bigger too. At the end of the last regulation, they were talking about it being the closest qualifying sessions that we've ever had. All 20 drivers within a second of each other, all these different things. That's going out the window. We're seeing Aston Martin have some serious engine issues that they were 4.5 seconds off the pace on day three of the first test here in Bahrain. So they're significantly struggling with that engine, and that's just going to increase those gaps massively.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Talking about the like the data angle of it, where they can like use that data as a resource to prevent, you know, as much failure as they can, and you know the more engines available feeding you data, your guess is like the better off they would be. Let's talk about a couple of teams that aren't going to have as many of those resources. Some of the teams that are kind of newer to the grid. Specifically, we have Kick Sauber selling their slot, kind of turning into transforming into an Audi team. And then we also have an 11 team on the grid, Cadillac. So let's learn a little bit about these two teams.
Yeah, and so like you said, Audi coming in is at a really interesting spot because they have created their own powertrain, and so both Audi and Red Bull powertrains are bringing these new engine manufacturers with the Red Bull Ford partnership into this F1 season. Um, where the other teams are kind of bringing through the same engine providers and all that have been working and developing these over the past couple of years since they were planning the new regulations. Um, and so with Sauber becoming Audi, Nico Hulkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto are going to still be the drivers for the team this year in that slot. Just a little bit different look, colors, names, and all. And then Cadillac, like you said, they kind of are the other side of the interesting part with Audi bringing their own engine, where they're coming in as a new team, but bringing in or utilizing the Ferrari engine for the first couple of seasons before they fully have developed their own engine, which their plan is to have that General Motors engine ready for the 2029 season. So they're kind of building up that process and development of the engine, where Audi is just diving headfirst into it with their own for this year.
Yeah, and I think the Cadillac, 11th team on the grid is going to be really interesting. I think a lot of people are just kind of relegating them to the back of the grid. They're like, well, they just still have their training wheels on. They're just stay out of our way kind of deal. But yeah, we'll talk about what their results were actually like in testing and whatnot. But yeah, couple of interesting things as far as the teams go. Sergio Perez and Valtteri, it's they've definitely got experience. They've definitely got the veteran angle. Yeah, I think everybody's just excited to see how it goes. Basically, no expectations. I think if they finish anywhere higher than last, we're gonna be like just we're just going to be so happy as a sport, I think. But the other angle is like, well, a team that's already been here is below them, so that's going to be weird.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think I'm just expecting Cadillac to finish last for the year, just purely based on being a new team. Like it's a
Sure.
bit different from some of the other transitions, like we've had with Audi coming from Sauber, or like Braun becoming Mercedes at different couple eras ago in Formula One. And so those changes, like bringing a full new team that doesn't really have the same flow, the same experience as these long-standing teams, I think just puts them on the back foot. But like you said, having these veteran guys, Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas, who have experience on the race days, have experience in these teams and developing and all of that, are going to put them in a really solid position from that aspect. Having that knowledge and experience to kind of lean on.
Sure. I will say I'm predicting them 10th, and I'm predicting Aston Martin 11th. So I'm giving them more than most people. So I'm just gonna put that on wax, let everybody know.
I appreciate it. That's some true faith. Betting on the P10 instead of the P11. That's a big big vote of confidence.
I mean, it's a massive vote of confidence, and longtime listeners will know that long time Valtteri Bottas apologist. I'm a enjoyer of the old VB as it were. So I'm just giving props where they're due. That's all. Go back, watch some of those Mercedes days, man. He was electric. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely. He had some good times in Williams too. So there's definitely some strong talent between him and Sergio on that team. So I'm looking forward to seeing how things shake out. I think that's going to be a pretty interesting inter-team battle between the drivers. It's possible that there's going to be teams throughout the season that may not get points if there really is a gap between engines and providers and whatnot. So it may be that Valtteri with a P13 boosts Cadillac up over the Aston Martin squad. You never know. It's going to be fun to look back at the end of the season on some of these little predictions. And speaking of that, if you're listening and following along with us throughout the season, check out our Discord. We have a Google survey link that's going to be in there with 8 questions about the season. Answer them. You'll be able to see the polls of each answer to see where people went. It's still anonymous, but enjoy. We want you to have fun with us as we're going through the season. So definitely check out our link tree, find the Discord, come join us, fill out the survey, and see if you know F1 better than us by the end of the year.
I've already got my answers up there, so you can see my horrible predictions, and then if if anybody recognizes, they'll see the long con at work here, but you can check them out for yourself. My results are already up there. I hope anybody can join in on that. Yeah, I think it'll be fun to track over the year. But yeah, we've been floundering about Cadillac. I forced you to talk about Valtteri Bottas for probably a little bit too long. Let's talk about the Bahrain test. The only real thing we're saying about the Australia test was some teams didn't go. They opted for basically like other development routes. Like one of the big ones was Williams. Most of that test anyway, it was basically closed. Like all you could get were highlights, and there was like very little information like released about it. It was basically just like to the fans view, they were basically like social media days, right? Like you could just see cars on track, you could see like your favorite drivers like suiting up and stuff like this. So the early the Barcelona test, the first test, we don't have to cover too much, but the Bahrain had a bunch of stuff. So Aaron, let's get into the testing.
Yeah, why don't you kick us off? We had so the 2 weeks of testing, 3 days each week. So um, kind of got to see the teams bring different or work on different things throughout the different days of testing here.
Yeah, so I think a couple of notes up front is they're long days. So I believe it's like 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the evening, or it's like 5 and 5 or whatever. So like really long sessions where they're basically all doing different things, but mostly they're running one driver in the morning and the other in the evening doing some type of like shift system, or they would do one driver goes all day and then they rest the next, and then have the other driver go the full day the next. I don't know how popular that one was, but basically I'm just saying is like all teams are running different variations of strategies. The comparison data I think is not very reliable, because even if you fast forward all the way to the last day, not everybody did glory runs. Not everybody, limited fuel, crank up the power, let's see what we've got. Not everybody did that, right? So you don't even know, like, okay, well, yeah, this team put up the fastest time. Well, it's like, yeah, but who else tried to, So I think there are elements of that where teams were worried about collecting different sets of data. Not everybody was trying to collect the same data, basically. So just a couple things to remember, like when talking about testing, because it's all relative, right? And
Right.
some of it may not matter come Melbourne, but we're just here to talk about what we saw on the days. I didn't watch every minute of every day of testing. I'm not sure I could have listened to Jolien for that long. But right, so we're just gonna offer some highlights here, just kind of what we saw. Some of it'll be like, oh, a little bit of tracking what their like technical developments were and things like this. But with that in mind, I think that like kind of sets us up pretty well to talk about testing. Are there any like added elements that like should be caveats for the conversation?
I think along with like teams doing different testing plans and things like that, another big one is teams are still trying to hide some of their innovations or their speed or their engine power and everything. With Ferrari, for instance, even their rear wing active aero system, they didn't bring that until the first day of the second week of the Bahrain test. So they did 3 days with more of a standard wing, and then they were like, okay, we've got that data, so let's try out the new fancy wing and threw that on the car. Mercedes is reported that they were not turning their engine all the way up to kind of hide some of those things, as well as just gain data on reliability. Like that's one of the big things they're trying to look for: engine problems or the engine and the battery and how well they're working together to go into the different modes for the startup procedures for all these different things. And so for that, like turning the engine all the way up, cranking it, and just like going and just putting a lot more wear on it at those higher engine modes, they're like, we want to get as much lap time and other data, so let's turn it down a little bit. Let's not blow our engine when it's this early. Let's get the data, and it is super important. We saw Aston Martin really struggle with some issues with their engine throughout testing. Some vibrations and things causing issues with the battery, and so how those two parts work together. Aston Martin ends up with 334 total laps, where McLaren topped the chart with 817, more than double their lap count on the 6 days of testing. So it's really a lot of things that teams were kind of doing that maybe don't give us the full picture of race day, full speed, and what that's gonna look like.
Right, exactly. They weren't just rocking up every day, going like, let's see how fast we can go. Right? There's a lot of stuff going on at testing. So yeah, with all that being said, I think we can kind of move into to some of our takeaways from the day. Kind of the biggest highlight from day one is the amount of lockups and offs from the drivers. Specifically, turn one, turn 10 was like a massive problem, and that was up and down the grid. So you can see the just some issues in the like break points. Obviously, there's low grip conditions at Bahrain. Sometimes the track can get sandy. There's sometimes notable wins on the track as well. So I think day one was pretty rough for a lot of teams. Just really not having their legs under them really. So that was like one of the biggest problems that you saw. Like you said, yeah, Aston Martin running like 35 laps on day one. So that was like not great for them. And then you compare that to other teams where they're getting much more running in, and the drivers are just sitting there. If they're not in the car, so that's a big problem. What were some other takeaways for you from day one?
Well, and so kind of just piggybacking off what you were saying with the running wide slides and everything that we're seeing, lockups with the tires. I think another big component of that is how different the aerodynamics are from the previous generation. You had mentioned earlier the downforce coming from the floor in the previous generation of cars. Now, without that, these cars do have a lot less downforce. They're trying to adapt to that, and so less downforce, less grip, and you're seeing these cars struggle on. So there's a number of things, like you said, the sand, the winds, but also that just difference in the cars themselves that I think everyone was kind of coming to grips with, pun intended there, on the first day of testing. But Alpine and Audi, as well as Aston Martin, had some minor engine trouble that hiccups with the systems there on day one.
Yeah, and then a couple early reports from Mercedes on that day one. I think this was in between the two sessions as well. This was from Toto Wolff feeling like they had a strong car. They were actually feeling relatively comfortable with what they were doing. Their main problem on at least day one, Mercedes stated, was a like primarily a balance issue. He didn't state whether that was like front to back or left to right, but that was just one of the issues that Mercedes was dealing with. One of the teams that over the course of the days ended up looking really good, getting a solid amount of laps in as well. The one thing that I thought was really funny about Cadillac, reports coming from the team, it was just like they were just so happy to be there. Everything was just like it's just a journey of first, man. Like it's the first time we fired up the car, like in the garage. Like first time Valtteri put his helmet on, man. That was pretty cool, man. First time we like drove out of the garage. So Cadillac was just like on that high of basically like they just had the new shoe smell on. Their first day of school outfit. They're feeling pretty good. So I thought that was funny. And
It's
then of course, this reminds me of the Vettel story. After he won like one of his championships, right the next day, he's like in the gym. One of the other people from the team sees him, and he's like, "Oh man, you're here early." And Vettel's response is like, "Yeah, well, the next season starts today." And it's just like, "No, of course this guy is gonna win." Max on day one does 136 laps, by the way. So give us a chance, man.
it's crazy, but that is funny with Cadillac. It's like a baby book where it's like, oh,
Yes.
first steps, first word, first. So that is pretty funny and also cool for Cadillac. I won't clown them too
Of
much for it
course.
because it is definitely a massive undertaking to join the F1 grid as a brand new team, and so big props for them. But it is funny. It'll be exciting to see when they get their first points or anything like that. What their highest finishing positions are at the end of the year. Um, but they definitely did have a little bit of trouble through this testing. Day two, they had a red flag early to pull the car in, and then were able to get it back out. So still they're growing pains, but along with everyone, and day two also we still saw a lot of similarities to day one with just coming to figure out how to drive these cars, lockups, going wide at turns and everything. But it seemed like everyone had their little hiccups throughout the testing. Red Bull had a hydraulic issue that pulled Hajar from the early session after only a few laps. Williams, on the other hand, on day two was getting a ton of laps in and kind of trying to make up for that Barcelona test that they missed. So that was one of I feel like Williams' key points throughout the test was just to get as many laps in as possible, as much data as possible, so that they could kind of catch up from yeah missing that early testing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's gonna be really important for Williams, especially with the year that they had last year. You don't want to have that kind of success, those types of peaks, and then just get set right back. You would hope that they are in some way able to carry that momentum like forward. So yeah, hopefully the missing of the first test wasn't too detrimental for them. As like the way I understood it is they opted for like a different advanced simulation strategy, so they weren't like they were basically like allocating their time in just like a different area where teams were like choosing to go on track. They made a different kind of choice. So interesting. I hope it doesn't affect them too much. The one thing I wanted to say just from day one, the top three at the end of running was Lando, Max, Charles, and then the only reason this is going to matter is because towards the end of the test, we start to see some of the same names showing up. And that's where we can kind of get a sense of like, okay, like maybe there is a bit of a pecking order. Maybe you can kind of like just start to like peek through the slats and see what the performance might be. So that's the only reason I'm bringing that to the table. Lando Max Charles was the day one. Interesting reports coming out of Red Bull on day two. Lauren Mekies was quoted as saying like they are patient with where they were in the test. They were looking around. They did not feel like they were the benchmark. They felt like they had some like notable challenges to overcome. And part of that, what he mentioned was the new power unit and chassis. So they're like they they were working on just like some different issues, but Lauren Mekies did sound pretty confident, so I thought that was interesting. And then big highlight from day two, people started racing. People started trying to overtake, getting a little antsy on track. So I thought that was really exciting. And then we just learned a little bit more about Audi on day two, where I think believers will tell you that they've got they've got good bones from the Sauber team. They brought in like some more solid like staff, and then this is the element that I didn't know. This is why I'm bringing it up. Audi competes in many of the other top racing series, and they are a race winning org in those series. So think Le Mans, touring cars, World Rally Car as well. So the Audi outfit is coming from, and this is what I didn't know, is like a pedigree of racing in other series, and now they're just gonna hope to add Formula One to that. So I thought that was cool, learning a little bit of Audi, and not just thinking of them as like just this Sauber insert. I'm bringing that up to so we could kind of start thinking of them as their own team, even though like there is some common elements there. Just a way to kind of learn more and get their own identity. Last thing I'll say about day two, finishing positions were Leclerc 1, Norris 2, and Oliver Behrman P3. So interesting there. Did you have any other notes for day two?
No, I think that covers it pretty well. So day three, and I mentioned it earlier. One of my biggest notes, and were with the Ferrari. We're seeing some continued kind of success. We saw Ferrari putting in some fast times on day two. Lewis carried that into day three. He had the third fastest time of the day. Stealing your thunder for the end of the day here with the top three, but the other big note was this is where Aston Martin was about 4.5 seconds off the pace of the other cars, really struggling, and that's when this kind of became pretty apparent that there was a significant issue with their engine and battery and everything. So they talked about kind of hoping that everything will be fixed quickly, but have kind of some lower expectations for Australia and Melbourne coming up. So it's going to be pretty interesting. And this was kind of that first initial inkling that there might be trouble in Adrian Newey paradise.
Yeah, yeah, which is like a really interesting element of the conversation because I think that was really hammed up. That was a really worthwhile talking point when thinking of that like acquisition. But yeah, right now it's not paying the pancakes. We needed to pay more pancakes.
Yeah, it's and Adrian Newey's more of an aerodynamic specialist, so I won't attribute the engine problems to him. But with him being at the helm, it's definitely
Okay,
not the best look.
for sure. Yeah, I think I would agree. The interesting thing about day three, we had a bunch of like changeable conditions throughout the day. Temperatures changing, winds changing. There was like like very different like grip conditions from the like morning to the evening session. So specifically from the McLaren camp, from my boy Lando, the 2025 World Drivers Champion, was stating that day three was some really solid learnings. He felt like he was able to like get the car in a bunch of different environments and just see how that felt. So I think day three of the test was a good learning from the McLaren side as well. So I thought that was pretty neat. This is when the sandbagging conversations kind of started. People were like getting a sense that okay, I think teams are hiding stuff. They're like not doing other things that like teams are doing, like they're specifically this was being said about Mercedes was they were basically just doing like what felt like the same lap times or like the same procedures or whatever. It didn't feel like they were like really giving anything away. But at the same time, George Russell was the first one into the 133s. So he was the first time to, first one to hit that significant lap time. So yeah, unsure what to say about all that, but yeah, that's when the politics really start. That's when all the team principals start trying to aim at each other. So I thought day three was pretty interesting in that regard, and then like you said, with the double Mercedes at the top.
Yeah, and everyone's trying to deflect as well. They don't want the pressure of being like the top
Right.
dog this early
Oh
because
no,
they
not us.
know that they're going to run into their issues throughout the season, and if it's like, oh, Mercedes is the far and away best team, and then their engine blows up in the second race, people are going to be like, ah ha ha ha, that's crazy, they were supposed to be the top dog and this and that. They're like,
Right.
no, I don't want that pressure. Hey, look at Red Bull. Like, develop like them. We've got nothing for you to see over here.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing crazy. Just doing our thing. And so, yeah, really trying to kind of distract and deflect a little bit as you're going through the testing sessions.
Yeah, I would say so. And yeah, teams never wanting to be the nobody willing to be like we are the big dogs, we are the fastest ones. Like nobody is going to paint that target on their back, and understandably so. What I thought was really funny was the amount of scenes of turn 10 drivers just like taking like the loop around, like they would like miss turn 10 and it was just this very common, just like very roundabout, just and then they would like take it straight on. So I thought that was really funny. You just see like Bortoletto and they were like, oh, there's Gabrielle like taking a funny route through turn 10 or whatever. He's just like circling off track. So I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, he wasn't the only one.
Mm.
This was constant over the tests where they're like, their braking zones are they're changing. They're trying to dial in all these tools. So yeah, some wackiness on track, but I don't think it's indicative of anything really. Just kind of some funny moments on the broadcast.
Yeah, and I mean that's what we've been waiting for, and that's kind of the excitement. There's, like you said, these testing sessions are long, so finding those little highlights and things for that are amusing or entertaining about this is what we're looking for, while the teams are looking for that data. So from the viewer perspective, it was definitely it was fun to watch these cars just on track and see what they're struggling with, and then maybe down the line we'll see how that plays into how the cars do at different circuits throughout the season. But yeah, the big U-turn that they were doing there in turn 10 was definitely an amusing one. So some good driving and fun stuff to see here in the testing.
I'm pretty sure that'll count for a track limits violation in the race, but we'll let it go for now. So that was the first week of testing, and it was still really rough around the bones. I don't think I I don't think teams really felt dialed in to any degree at that point, and it seemed like a lot of teams were pointing towards, like reporting towards Mercedes as, thinking of them as top of the pack. So that was kind of the first week of testing. Any final notes in that regard, or you want to move on to the second week?
Yeah, we can head into week 2 of the Bahrain test here.
Sounds good. The thing that stood out to me the most at the end of day one was McLaren and Ferrari looking very strong. I don't think I was able to see as much of the Mercedes running, but I have a feeling that they were either doing different, slower plans because they were much lower on the timetable as well. So McLaren and Ferrari looking to do like some more higher speed simulations. So they were looking really good. Hamilton sounding confident in the media pen as well. So that's always nice to hear. I may have been 1 year early on my Hamilton prediction for Ferrari. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, any notes here from day one?
Well, I know one of the big conversations for day one was, and this was part of where Mercedes was really trying to deflect towards Red Bull, and oh, they're the top dog. Look at them, because Red Bull was able to start hitting kind of the highest top speeds on the straights, really utilizing that battery and engine together well. And having that battery power last longer on some of the straights than a number of the teams were able to get. So whether they were charging it up or just more efficient energy deployment, that seems like it is a sign of one of the Red Bulls' kind of early strengths here, from what we're seeing. But that was that, and Williams at this point, I felt like they had kind of caught up with the pack a little bit. They were got in so many laps in the first week, and this is where I felt like they were able to kind of get their legs under themselves to do a bit more running, and just go through some of their specific plans and not just let's get laps in, let's learn the car. They were starting to kind of dial in their car as well.
Yeah, that was my sense as well. McLaren starting to feel, or not McLaren, sorry, Williams starting to feel much better in the second week. I think the confidence from James Vowles was much higher, even if the words he was using were similar. Yeah, you could tell there was more confidence out of the Williams camp. So I thought that was interesting, and that's evidenced by on that day. I think Sainz was fifth fastest on that week two day one. So yeah, definite improvements. Cars still having a propensity for locking up after the high speeds. So again, the turn one, turn 10, still a problem as far into the test as day four. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then the top of the timetables was Russell P1, Piastri P2, and Leclerc P3. And that was about it for day one. And day two of week two, I think, was one of the most exciting days. This is when a bunch of the teams were debuting. Some of their, like, higher level like tech innovations, you could say, whether they had them or like they were in development or whatever. But yeah, this is when you see the Ferrari like lift rear wing, as opposed to people were doing traditional DRS. There's flipping up, which was really interesting. We're seeing a bunch of different um, tech innovations. This is where you're starting to see the front arrow elements be different. You've got different scoop sizes, whether it's like a double brake or a single brake. You're starting to see the differences there show up. So yeah, a bunch of really cool stuff on the day two of the second week.
Yeah, 100%. That's kind of that excitement about the innovations and everything. All the different designs you're seeing. I think it was Audi swapping out their vented like engine slots in them for that cooling and everything. You're seeing how these teams are just testing, yeah, some of these different innovations. And once they had gotten that uh, initial data, kind of for the first few days, they were like, let's this is the time to test some of these things out, see if they work like we expect them to, and kind of ramping up for the Australia race and just getting prepared for what that car may actually look and feel like for race one, and kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit on some of the development.
Yeah, end of day two. Red Bull very happy. Max was pretty confident. Even though I don't think he's enjoying the car too much, as reports would have us believe. I think he was overall happy with like whatever progress they were able to make. At least on that day, he enjoyed the program. It sounded just like in general a pretty smooth afternoon for Red Bull as a whole. Zach Brown was confident out of that day as well. He believes he's big four, though he doesn't think they are, the benchmark, as it were. So I think Zach Brown keeping his cards close to his chest. Obviously Lando's biggest fan, Zach Brown. So I'm cautious about those kind of reports from them. Obviously, I don't think anybody's going to put themselves as number one. So yeah, Zach Brown, keeping it close to the chest, and then we're starting to see test race starts where I think they lined up like 10 cars. I think it was like five on each side, and got to see what the new race start procedures were. And this is where we got all the info, like we had talked about at the top of the show, on Lewis Hamilton and his new magic button, as it were. Because him in the Ferrari and the Haas, specifically Oliver Behrman, was very quick off the line. So yeah, whatever they're doing with their start procedure is very interesting, and it's turning heads because I'm pretty sure in that race start, Hamilton started like he was like ninth or 10th back, and he was P1 going into turn one. So whatever they've got going on is pretty crazy, and I'm excited to learn more about that start procedure because I kind of want to see if large advantages can be had in that regard.
Yeah, and the only other note that I had on day two was really about Franco Colapinto. He
Mm.
finishes with 120 laps, so like two race distances worth, and then was sixth out of the 16 runners that went that day. So a really solid day for him in Alpine, especially after some of the struggles that we saw from him last year, coming in. I think that's a just a big day for him, to be able to get that many laps in, and also to really put in a solid time. And of course, more laps, more opportunities to do that really good time. But he was really on it for the day.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the drivers that were because it felt like each driver had a really long day where they would do kind of like an average number, and then there was like a max that each of them would hit. Because I think there was a day where Lando did like 140 or something. So a bunch of drivers having the opportunity to put a whole bunch of laps in, unless you were an Aston Martin. Um, Top of the running order for day two was Antonelli P1, Piastri P2, Verstappen P3, and then we can move on to the final day of testing, which was the Friday on the second week. Notes here, Aaron.
Yeah, well, and you had said like with this being the final day of testing, this is when some of the teams let it rip, and just were putting in those qualifying laps. We saw Charles Leclerc put the fastest lap of testing in, getting down into the 131s. But a number of teams' fastest times came on that final day. 7 of the 11 teams put in their fastest
Yeah, really fun to see. Really fun to see the lap times like really dropping off on that last day, as teams are really kind of seeing what their package can do. Unfortunately, on the last day, Antonelli's car was dealing with some deployment issues. So Mercedes is kind of wary about their starting procedure in particular, feeling like they may be strong in some areas, but they've really got to shore up their start. With Antonelli's power issues there. Reports from Haas on the last day stating that they found a lot of performance in the second week. They learned a lot about their car, and I think they're like really excited about the Ferrari engine. I think they're like pretty confident in the package that they have, which if you're in the Discord, if you're filling out the survey, that's why I said that Haas is going to be the best of the rest. I put that answer down on wax. So see me at the end of the year when they're P5, or well, I guess if they're anything else, you're wrong. Even if they're P4, you're wrong because it'll be a
Yeah.
different team that's the best of the rest. So my guess is for Haas, and that's why because Io Komatsu was quite positive.
Yeah, and I also chose them as my best of the rest because I felt like they looked really strong here throughout the testing, and Oliver Behrman really impressed me last year with how he was driving. I think he's going to have another good season this year, and Esteban Ocon is still competitive with him as well. So I think the two of them together, it'll give them some good opportunities for points on the year. So Haas, if you pick someone else and guess right and we're wrong, then there you go. There's one up on us. So yeah, don't forget to fill out that survey form in the Discord. We'll have the link there. Um, but yeah, I think that was kind of the majority of my notes for testing. It did seem like the Mercedes power unit had a little bit more reliability concerns throughout testing than we saw with the Ferrari or the Red Bull powertrains. So a little bit of a difference there, but that also is partially from more Mercedes engines out there. So the same thing with gathering more data, there's more opportunities for something to kind of go wrong or for that any concerns to become apparent, which is valuable in testing, but does of course bring up a little bit of a reliability concern earlier in the season. With that being said, they still looked like they're probably going to be the quickest out of the gate with Red Bull pretty close there as well. But yeah, some exciting little teasers for the beginning of the season from testing here.
And it's not obvious if the running order or the rough running order from testing is going to be even remotely close to what we see at Melbourne, or it may just predict the season, almost exactly. So you can take what you want from the testing, but yeah, I was just a fan of seeing the cars back on track, seeing my favorite drivers get suited up. So I think that was really fun. Day three running order, Leclerc was at the front, Norris was P2, and Max was P3. I'm going to run through just really quickly some technical testing highlights. These are innovations that certain teams have on their car that we didn't see on other cars. What these things do and why they are there, I don't know, but I'm just sharing what I saw. So the Ferrari power units have a focus on the starting procedures and the active aero rear wing, and that was noted by Lewis Hamilton and the Haas being particularly strong in that area, and then also noting like the big difference in the active aero. I think that's just like one of the biggest storylines from testing. I think that was like for most people like the big wow moment. So that's like the big thing Ferrari's bringing. Aston Martin used a high and rearward suspension system, which was very different to what many of the other teams were doing. That was an area that was like pretty consistent among the cars. So Aston Martin going with a different option. Interesting thing about Audi, their floor innovations include areas of the forward inlets that are cleared or moved out to allow like holes in the floor. It was speculated that this will help like bring air to important elements like that need cooling. So that was really interesting and something Audi is doing with their floor that it wasn't obvious that some other teams are doing. So I thought that was cool. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I think that also comes into play with Audi and their like side pod to this design. So they're finding ways to cool elsewhere, which they can then reduce weight by having less material on the sides of the car and also less drag by removing those. So, pretty interesting, yeah, innovation with that potential cooling holes in the floor and everything for the different components, allowing that along with maintaining their like reliability and engine temperatures and all.
Exactly. Alpine, another team that was testing different cooling elements. Their experimentation was closer to the rear. Over the course of some of their days, you could see their rear systems looking different, and they were trying out different elements. And then one area of development that is less easier to see but important when you get to like pit stops. Different teams are opting for various cooling systems for the brakes and the tires. So where commonly you would see these like large air directing um, pieces of pieces of machining, they're opting for like small slats in the housing that can help cool. So I thought that was very interesting, and all of that is part of, and I think a lot of teams are on this quest. You'll notice, and this was brought to my attention. This was not something I picked up on myself. This was brought to my attention, but I thought it was fascinating, and it's in that vein of like trying to find any aerodynamic advantage that they can. Teams are now optimizing their sensor mounting. So they're trying to reduce the amount of like bumps and lips that are all over their sticky uppy bits and whatever, so they're not like disrupting air where they don't want to be or unnecessarily. So I thought that was a fascinating element, and like I said, it was brought to my attention, but interesting nonetheless. So these are some of the like technical elements that you could see on the car that were different or like change over the course of the test. And these were just some notable ones from some of the teams that I saw that were kind of like, oh, like that's different. Or like, oh, that's pretty cool. So yeah, I thought those were interesting, and I think now we're going to start seeing a leaf blower at the front of drivers' noses, and that's obviously for driver cooling and this. But that'll be a new area where you're seeing the yeah, you get it. So yeah, those are just some technical testing highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. So the leaf blowers will be out in full force. They can use them to blow sand off the track to cool down the cars. A whole multitude of things we'll see, but yeah, I think we're gonna just continue to see a lot of really interesting innovations and differences between the cars in this early in this regulation change and everything, and it's just really pretty exciting. I love to see the new technical challenges and solutions that they come up with. So yeah, a lot of exciting things, and that's just outside the normal. Oh, the side pod cooling inlets are different sizes on these different cars, or the diffuser inlet behind the driver's head. I think the Williams one was significantly bigger or something like that. So you'll see a number of other variations between the cars, but those are definitely some of the pretty significant ones that you'll get to see and hear about throughout the season. Um, but to kind of wrap from testing and just get us geared up for the season, I just wanted to do a quick rundown of the driver lineups here. So they're fresh for everyone. We've got 11 teams, of course. So we have Pierre Gasly and Franco Colapinto in the Alpine car, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, Nico Hulkenberg and Gabriel Bortoletto in the Audi, Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas in the Cadillac, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari, Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman in the Haas car, Lando and Oscar in the McLaren. Lando sporting at number one this year for the 2025 Drivers' Championship. George Russell, Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes, and then Liam Lawson and our only rookie so far this season, unless there's any changes partway through, Arvid Lindblad in the Racing Bulls car, Max Verstappen and Isak Hadjar in the Red Bull, and then finally Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon in the Williams car for the year.
Nice.
Yeah, so like I said, Arvid Lindblad going to be our rookie of the year for the season. Only rookie on the grid. Only a couple of driver swaps, so not too many big changes. Really, the biggest ones were Arvid coming into the Racing Bulls, Isak Hadjar being converted to Red Bull, replacing Yuki Tsunoda, and then the Cadillac team coming in as the 11th team with Sergio Perez, who is a 6-time race winner, and Valtteri Bottas, a 10-time race winner. So just a lot of excitement. I'm raring to go. We've got a fun 24 race season ahead of us here.
All right, Aaron, you and I, we just met on an elevator. We're in Hawaii, you're on vacation, I'm on a business trip. You say, yo, Formula One starting up this weekend, man. And I say, give me an elevator pitch on why I should be a Cadillac fan. What did you see in testing? Why should I be a Cadillac fan?
I think they are just going to be exciting to watch throughout the season. It's a brand new team, so the possibilities are endless here for where they could go. They have the veteran leadership on the driver's side, but they have that new energy from the team side. They also have a third driver, reserve driver, Colton Herta, who is going to be helping the team while competing in Formula 2 throughout the year with high tech racing, who has had some really solid experience and success over in IndyCar. So bringing that aspect to the team and just a whole new energy to a new U.S. team. So us being from the States here, we now have Haas as well as the new Cadillac team to pull for. So if you're joining F1 as a new watcher, join and be a fan of the new team.
Okay, okay. Okay, that's pretty solid. I don't like the sound of that though. I might want to be an Alpine fan. Tell me about them.
I mean, Alpine, you've got a race winner, Pierre Gasly, and then a young talent, Franco Colapinto. They are switching from previously having a Renault power unit to going with the Mercedes power unit this year. The Mercedes power unit looks like it's going to be pretty good, and so I think with the veteran leadership of Gasly in that driver lineup, and the excellent decision making of a team boss like Flavio Briatore, you're just setting yourself up for success.
Okay, okay, that's interesting. I also heard that they had sacked their 24 season, and I also heard they sacked their 25 season for the hope that the 26 season is going to be theirs.
I definitely
So,
think
so that's a decent selling point for Alpine.
yeah, I think that definitely gives them a little bit of an extra boost there.
Okay, all right, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, and like you said, this year having the Mercedes power unit, I think puts them like in some ways like in actual conversation, you know what I mean, where at least they'll have like similar tools available to them, because if you remember they were the only ones buying Renault power, right? So yeah.
Yeah, so definitely a shift and kind of more into that Williams range potentially, where uh, they have a strong power unit supplier, and they're going to be able to just focus on development based on that strongest, well, presumably strongest engine, where the Renault engine previously was a midfield engine, and then on top of that, with the kind of tanking of the past couple years to develop for the future, yeah, definitely had their struggles. So Alpine could be on an upswing.
And on the note of developing for the future, you know, I'm a businessman. I like to drive luxury vehicles. I heard Audi is now going to be in Formula One, but they're not looking for results until like 2030. You know, I'm a growth minded individual. I could get behind a team that's saying like, hey, we're not looking for results now. We're just looking to build a solid foundation and get our systems in place. What are your thoughts on the Audi camp?
Buy low, sell high. You've got
Okay.
a low entry point, low expectations now, but you have the personnel and the talent there that can propel you forward in the future. Bringing in a team boss like Matteo Binotto, who had some solid years with Ferrari in a successful team. You're bringing in a number of these different designers for the car. I believe Pierre Wash is moved over there as well, who used to be with Red Bull. So you have some of these big personnel choices put into some good positions, and positions where they know how to develop and build success over time. So if you're looking to get in early on the Audi squad, now's the time. And by that 2030 mark, I think we'll see them moving a good bit forward on the grid.
Very cool. I like the optimism for the Audi camp. I was very pleased with the Haas test. I think in general we're higher on Haas than we've ever been coming out of a test. They feel like genuine competitors. You said it. You know, I'm putting them, or you're putting them best of the rest. I'm putting them best of the rest as well. Yeah, obviously the Ferrari power unit is encouraging as well for the team with the hopefully increased reliability, and then they were able to get some solid race simulations done that put them at the top of the midfield. So I think Haas is feeling confident. Do you have a contrarian point to Haas?
Not a contrarian point, as much as I think it's just an exciting moment for the team. Looking this strong out of testing, the team has never scored a podium finish, and they've been around for quite some time now. Fourth place has been their highest finishing position. So
That's right.
and that was last year with Ollie Behrman, and also back in 2018 with Roman Grosjean. So an exciting opportunity, especially with the potential reliability issues and chaos that could come on race day. We may be able to see the Haas sneak up into those podium positions. So a lot of opportunities out there. The world is everyone's oyster right now. We don't know what's going to happen. So the possibilities are endless.
Damn, I mean, you heard it here first. The Haas with no downsides. Yeah, all upside for Haas. Okay, all right, not bad. Next team I have on my list is Aston Martin.
I don't have an upside for them right now. That might be a hop on board next year once they figure out their engine issues. I will say one thing with that is that Honda developed a pretty strong engine for the Red Bull team over the past few years before they now became the engine provider for Aston Martin. Um, so I think there is a likelihood that that Honda engine will get better, and very hopefully for the Aston Martin squad, because right now I think they're gonna struggle early in the season in particular, and then we'll see how that development goes across the year.
Okay, yeah, that seems pretty reasonable, and maybe giving them more of the silver lining, as it were. Okay, so starting to get towards the top of the table here. What are your thoughts on Racing Bulls? What was your impression of them after the test?
I feel like one of the biggest things was just that the Red Bull powertrain looked pretty reliable. Lindblad looked like he was relatively on even footing with Liam Lawson, even as a rookie. So I think he looks like he is going to be pretty competitive with his teammate at least throughout the year. He had some good times in testing, so I'm definitely looking um, towards them to kind of improve throughout the season, especially with Lindblad there, um, and then hopefully with some of the strengths of the Red Bull powertrain that we saw with their car and the Red Bull car, they may have some good opportunities to put themselves in good qualifying positions, and then some good race finishes. So I think they have a decent upside, but the younger driver lineup across a lot of the teams on the grid here, I think will have a little bit of growing pain.
That's really fair. Now, one analyst that I heard from said that Lindblad might be the best rookie we've had in years. So 100% of analysts that I've heard of or heard from are very high on Lindblad. So yeah, that's an interesting angle.
Yeah, so definitely he looked good. He got a lot of laps in. He was making um, kind of the same mistakes as everyone. Didn't have anything that really stood out as a glaring weakness or anything like that. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how he does across the year. But I'm still trying to keep those expectations a little bit low, as there's obviously room to grow and a lot that he's gonna learn and experience throughout this first season in Formula One.
Sure. I'm asking for the elevator pitch, not the very like measured, like lukewarm, just very tepid, like, well, like everybody's in like a similar position, so like this is the elevator pitch, man. We're trying to build fans for these teams here. One of the fan favorites, Williams. We've got a veteran lineup, Albon Signs. Kind of sell me on them. Why should we watch Williams?
I mean, they put Carlos Sainz into the podium twice last season. It was the first time in a decade since they had two podium finishes. Both drivers looked really strong, just unfortunately at different parts of the season. So if they can get that consistency a little bit more narrowed down, I think there's a lot of potential for success there with the Williams team. Is that better pitch? I brought it back up for that one.
Bro, that sounded great. I was literally googling Williams F1 team as you were talking. It just my fingers just started typing. That was like a really good sell. I was like, oh shit, let me see what's going on with them. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I think they'll be a good watch. Now I've heard a lot about Ferrari and their technical innovations. Is that somewhere where you would put your Kalshi bets?
I think there's a couple of components. This is Lewis Hamilton looking confident again. he has been a part of the development of this car for a full year. So he's raring and ready to go. The winningest Formula One driver on the grid, or actually ever. Sorry, not on. Well, both on the grid and of all time. He has the most race wins. Don't question it. And then Charles Leclerc coming in freshly married over the past like week, I think it was. So
Okay.
coming in with that new zest for life that falling in love just brings to you. So why not fall in love with the bright red of Ferrari?
And that's from personal experience. We know this.
What?
Charles Leclerc's feelings.
Oh yes, 100%.
100%, of course. All right. So now the next team that I have on my list, I'm I'm gonna play into who I'm talking to. So tell me why you shouldn't be a Red Bull fan.
If you don't like winning, then don't be a Red Bull fan, because you have the best driver on the grid there, but you you may not be able to be a fan of him for very long because he does not like driving these new cars, as you mentioned earlier in the episode. He's grouchy about not going as fast as he would like to go, and so he may be going out the F1 retirement door before too long. So stocks are high, sell high while you can, and get off the ship.
Gotcha. Okay. So if you hate winning, if you don't want a sad Max, we shouldn't be a Red Bull fan. Specifically, if we dislike winning.
Exactly. That's the
That
biggest
seems
thing.
that seems pretty reasonable. Okay. All right. That's fair. Now, this is where I think a lot of conversations are pointing, maybe depending on bias. I don't know if people are just going specifically by like the data and the test. Maybe some of the also messaging from the teams. I'm curious. How are we feeling for Mercedes?
So I think from what we saw in the test, Mercedes has a lot of high sides. You've got George Russell, who is a proven race winner. Kimi Antonelli looked extremely strong with his development throughout his rookie season, and is coming into the season looking really good. And the Mercedes package just seems to have the most conversations behind it right now. Looking at a positive direction. The caveat being that if there are reliability issues, there could be some inconsistency, which keeps the door open for other teams. But I think you have a solid driver lineup, solid team personnel and leadership with Toto Wolff. And so I think it's no surprise that they're kind of the talk of the town in terms of who's looking like the best team out of the gate.
Okay. All right. That seems really reasonable. So the Silver Arrows may be a little bit deserving of the attention you're thinking.
I think so. I think you can look to them, and although they're downplaying it now, George Russell has talked about being excited for new regulations, for the opportunity to win his first world championship and be up there in that fight. Since he's joined Mercedes, he's kind of played that second fiddle, just always that next guy up. So that opportunity here with the new regulations is there, and I don't think he wants to miss that opportunity while the iron's hot, as they say.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense to me. Now we're getting near the top. Penthouse is just a couple floors away. Turns out we're headed to the same party, but we've just got one last team, for you to give me the pitch on before we can go and join the guests of the party. So tell me why we should be high on McLaren. What were your thoughts of their test?
I think with the McLaren team, there is uh, currently the strongest driver lineup on the grid, in my opinion, with both drivers. The consistency we saw from them both, the highs and minimal amount of lows that the two drivers have or have had over the past couple of years. Back to back constructors championship winners. Um, that shows that the team has that formula for success there a little bit. And then, of course, the reigning drivers' championship, Lando Norris. You have just a lot of confidence that comes with that. A lot of stress that just sheds off the shoulders once you've checked that off your F1 vision board there. So I think with the consistency, and then of course Oscar led the championship for a significant portion last year. He wants to get back there. He wants to beat his teammate, and he wants that success that he was so close to. So I think there's a lot of drive behind Oscar to continue stepping up and proving himself and uh, take or really proving that shared first driver title that McLaren gives both of their guys.
Where most of my nightmares end being eaten by a fruitcake, his end at the wall in Baku, and it's just cold sweats waking up. He's like, no. And in his mind, the start procedure, it goes again, and there he is, just bogged down at the line, and he says, "No!" So that's what Oscar Piastri is. He's trying to claw back.
Yeah, just regain his mental focus that went out the door there in Baku. But yeah, I think that McLaren is set up to have a strong year, and they also have the Mercedes power. So I'm personally feeling pretty high on McLaren. I think higher than some of the other analysts out here. I do think that with the engine, the consistency and talent of the drivers, that they're definitely going to be up there in that I would say P2 P3 kind of range in the constructors championship. I think they have an outside shot there at running it back for another year with the constructors.
Sure, yeah, nice little hat trick for the constructors championship would be pretty sweet. Yeah, I think I may just be just a powertrain fan, right? I think I just might be like a Mercedes power fan. So then, my enjoyment can just spread its legs a little bit. That's all.
I think that's what they call the leaf blowers, a Mercedes power fan. I think that's
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I think for anyone who's joining F1, this is a great time to get in. Everything's fresh, everything's new with these regulations, these cars. There's a lot of really fun, talented, interesting drivers out there on the grid, and you can find something for every team to root for and look forward to.
yeah, I think that's really well said. Yeah, just yeah, excitement. No matter which way you look, if you're here for the racing, I think it's going to be a little bit better. If you're here for the technical stuff, fresh regulations, you'll be able to sink your teeth in there. If you were getting tired with like the same old drivers and the same old thing, there's some new teams, some new racers to get involved with. So yeah, I think no matter what your angle, there'll be something to enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. So the F1 season starts very shortly. We've got the Australian Grand Prix coming up this weekend with the first practice session starting on Thursday. per the F1 website, about 71 hours away from practice session one. So that'll be starting, um, I think, at about 10:30 Eastern time on Thursday night, or I guess Wednesday night. I don't know. It's sometime soon. Keep an eye out, and F1's going to be back on your screens.
Is there anything we didn't cover from this preseason? Are there any other notes you want to hit? Are there any other points that you may have before we enter into the cooldown lap?
No, I think that covers it. I'm itching and ready to go. I'm ready to see what these teams were hiding, and see for those first practice sessions and qualifying, like what the pecking order looks like. So I'm just yeah, just amped.
It's going to be very exciting now for the first cool down lap of the 2026 Formula One season. Where we're doing flavor of the week. We ended with Rose Thorn Seed. We kind of, we went a little like heartfelt, at the end of last year. So instead of just basically saying what we've just said, we're gonna hit you with a flavor of the week because it's been months since we've shared anything from our physical real lives. Here we are just in the digital realm. But Aaron, tell me about your flavor of the week.
Sure. So, my food, obviously, since the end of last year, I've eaten plenty of good food, but recent one, Colleen and I went and got Chinese at like a nice little sit down Chinese place. It's a little new age, so cool vibe, good music going on, and some interesting dish options. Where I got some spicy. Like pepper chicken. Colleen went with flying noodles, which is one of the unique dishes, and it came out and the chopsticks were stuck into some of the noodles, like suspended above the rest of the dish there. So the way they cooked it and all, they maneuvered it to look pretty neat. So that was a solid dinner recently that we had. For my music, one of the newer albums that I've played through a bit that came out is ASAP Rocky's "Don't Be Dumb." There's a few songs on there that I've been jamming to, enjoying. I've listened through the full album a couple of times. Definitely enjoy ASAP Rocky's music, so that's a good one to check out if you're looking for a hip hop album to get into. And then for my visual medium, I've been excited for a bit for this, but Survivor 50 just dropped. This is the 25th year of Survivor. They're bringing back all previous people from all the way from the first season all the way up to season 49, the most recent season. A couple of people from season 49 came back on after just a 2 week gap between when they wrapped up filming for the previous season and jumped into this new season. So they're all unknown because that season hadn't aired when this was all filmed. So kind of a cool position for those people to be in, but overall, a very fun show for me personally. I love watching Survivor. I have for as long as I can remember, and then for it to be that returning player season and all the excitement of some of these people that I've cheered on in previous seasons of Survivor. It's pretty cool. So that is my flavor of the week for this week. But yeah, very excited for the upcoming year and all the different cooldown laps, flavor of the weeks, roast thorn and seeds, and other segments that we have here. But Justin, why don't you hit us with your flavor of the week here to wrap us out?
Sure thing. Now, as I understand the Survivor season 50, they're all returning players, but not all of that. Like, it's not a champion season, so not all of them are winners.
Right, there are some that are, but not everyone
Right.
who's coming back has one.
Very cool, very cool. And I understand the viewers have some more like voting angles for this show. Now I'm curious, Aaron, did you vote rice or no rice?
So I actually didn't know that there were votes going on about this, so I was not one of the fans that somehow I missed it, and I was not one of the fans that got to decide. I would have voted for Rice personally, though, because I um, I like the older school seasons where I don't know, people get real agitated when they're that hungry, and even though it can create a little more drama, I don't like to see everyone like sitting there starving really struggling. So I would have voted for Rice personally, but yeah, the season is in the hands of the fans, so there are a bunch of votes for different components of the game and everything that they added in throughout for this season that have come from other past seasons and all been uh, amalgamized together. I think I used that word correctly. So
Hmm. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it's interesting. I always find it fun that Survivor continually tries to innovate and kind of iterate on what actually is a really cool game. There's a lot of cool elements. You can win in a variety of different ways. So like different basically like different archetypes of people can win the game. So yeah, it's interesting to hear like how they change it over the years, and the voting aspect was really cool for Survivor 50. So yeah, I just wanted to see if you did vote what you would have said, but that's interesting. I'll get into my flavor of the week here. I just want to give a big shout out to friend of the show, helped me with a London broil recipe. Kind of explain the elements about the meat, what you want to be doing with the marinade, and like kind of why you go that route, and then gave me like a nice little recipe. Followed the recipe as closely as I could, and it came out. It was beautiful. It was mother approved. Even she was like, let me get a little more of that as well. So
nice.
it was yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So like really tasty dish. Was able to make it up into like some sandwiches later. So yeah, well, we've just been loving the London broil over here. That's been great. My visual medium here, I'll say it like this. I'm all caught up on the Jurassic Park cinematic universe. You could say there's like the Jurassic Parks, and then there's like the Jurassic World titled films. So I watched two recently. I watched the Dominion film, and then the one that has Scarlett Johansson. That one's called Rebirth. The difference in those two films, I think Dominion might be the worst movie that I've ever seen, and like I think it might be like the worst movie just like ever made. Like I'm unsure about that. Like it was rough. But then the third one, or the Rebirth, it felt like it went back to its roots in some weird way. It felt very similar to like two or three from the original Jurassic Parks. So I've been having a lot of fun there. I mean that's just like feel good, whatever. You're not looking for like a film when you put Jurassic Park on. Yeah, that's just like a movie. But I will say, Dominion was the worst movie I've ever seen. Like I was like pausing it. I was like reacting out loud. Like I rarely do that unless I'm like real whatever. So Dominion was bad. Like that's take that or leave it. And then the music that I've been listening to, I know you'll be a big fan of this. Swimming and Circles by Mac Miller, in my mind, are like they're like companion pieces to each other. In my mind, they're very similar to like a By the Way, and then the bonus tracks from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They just go together. So I put them both in a playlist, and I have Swimming running into Circles, and then you can put it on repeat, and then that's like a nice fun little addition. So I've been listening to those two albums as kind of like companion pieces to each other, and it really is good. Like it hasn't been just like one or two listens. that's just kind of like been playing a little bit. So those are fun albums as well. Rest in peace to Malcolm in that regard. But yeah, Swimming in Circles is it's solid and it's some really good music.
Oh yeah, those are two of my favorite. They were actually supposed to be like companion pieces, and there were supposed to be three total albums that all were like together. So yeah, definitely good ones to put together, and fun to yeah listen through straight through. A lot of favorites here and there. That I have on just some of my casual listening playlists that I
Sure.
hear when they pop up. Um, so yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying that as it sounds like as much as I do. So
Yeah, solid albums, but that's my flavor of the week, kind of flavor of my flavor of the month, as it were. But yeah, I think this has been a really fun episode back, a great way to kick off the 2026 season. Aaron, we're very shortly going to be racing again in Melbourne, and I, sir, am looking forward to it. But yeah, this is another episode of the Tired Boys podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Aaron?
thanks everyone for joining us for the first episode of our second season of the podcast. Here we're getting excited for the season. Don't forget you can find new episodes everywhere you find podcasts, as well as our video version on YouTube. And we really appreciate you taking the time to listen, like, share, subscribe, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your friends. We'd love to have you all join our community. And don't forget to check out the survey and fill that out in the Discord in the link tree that you can find there to join in on the fun.
Until next time, peace out, everyone.